Hey guys, what's going on? This is Roth and Eric here to talk about the big finale episode of Game of Thrones Season 5. So if you haven't watched it yet, get out of here. Go watch it. Come back. Then chat with us. Let us know what you thought. So you ready? Full spoilers ahead. Eric, what'd you think?
I liked it. I didn't love it. We were coming off two kind of terrific episodes, I thought, and really, you know, that this has been an interesting season and that it kind of like the first half, people were like, oh, it's kind of slow moving, and then I thought really those last few, huge momentum. The finale was good, and there were some great moments in it, certainly. There was also some stuff I thought was a little rushed, or maybe didn't have the build-up that, you know, to have the full impact on a show that's known for very impactful moments. There were some things where I thought, oh, you could have built that up better. That could have meant more. You know, they were, you know, it's Game of Thrones. There's a million characters, so of course they have to rush around, and some people only get a scene or two. But there was some time. I almost wished it was like a double-length episode at times.
You know, and it's interesting because I don't know that that would have solved what some of the issues were with it. And this is what I mean. There were some stories that we didn't want to spend much more time with, you know. And I think that maybe what feels like some of the uneven moments of the finale reflect the season as a whole.
Right.
And in that way, it's a very accurate finale. I also feel like it did have amazing moments in it, and I do think that that's something I've seen the response on the internets, and it's been shockingly to me, overwhelmingly negative. Not in the sense that people are like, oh, I was a little disappointed, that felt uneven, but like, this piece of I'm not allowed to curse show, you know, where I'm like, let's maybe pull that back a little bit. I don't think that it's quite gone to the level of this show is no longer any good, I'm done. Do you?
No. I've seen some of that, but it's like a couple things that I think are at work here. One is that because there's this onus on even a season finale, much less a series finale, but a season finale to really deliver. So when we're on a show like Game of Thrones that in general people love, and it's coming off of a few weeks of people being like, this is awesome episodes. When you have a finale that's just good, there's going to be that disappointment, which will then be reflected in it sucked. There's also the fact that you know, let's talk about the big thing, which is that when you end with killing Jon Snow, who is like one of the last sort of paragons of virtue and a hero figure, it's another moment for a show that's had about a half dozen of these now of I'm out. There are people who are like, that's it, you've gone too far, I'm out, even though most of those people are not out. But we are in that moment, right? And so that's where I think some of those two elements, I think, add to sort of a fury that's not really real, because there's still such, you know, strong moments. And I think, you know, you look at the episode and it's a good episode of Game of Thrones, but there are people who wanted more and who right now are really upset because Game of Thrones is an upsetting show often.
Yeah, it is an upsetting show. And it has been more and more, I feel, divisive as it's gone on, which is sort of interesting and something that we can delve into at some point. But in general, I think that inherently, and we've talked about this before, inherently an issue that the showrunners have had to solve, and sort of everybody's like blaming the showrunners entirely for any kind of uneven or clunkiness that has happened throughout this season. I loved many moments of this finale, by the way, so I'm not meaning to sound negative, and we'll talk about those. But is that the books introduce more and more characters, more and more complex story threads, some of which have resolution, some of which do not. And I think that they're doing the best that they can to manage that. Having said that, I don't think they have done an exemplary job, say, with Dorne, right? That's a storyline that we all sort of felt very meh about this season, and just were like, okay. You almost wish it wasn't there. You know, you just wish, but ostensibly speaking, we imagine that if it is there, there's a reason, and because that's going to play out in a bigger way going forward, right? I also think that inherently problematic is that first big death, Ned, shocking, right? Like just devastating to the viewer. And then you got the Red Wedding, devastating, right? And then at a certain point, people start to feel really apathetic. And they're like, okay, I get it. All the Starks, it's going to suck for them, and they're going to die, and everybody evil is going to win.
Someone named Stark wronged George R. Martin as a kid.
Like, they're just going to die, and that's going to suck. And I sort of get that point of view, but at the same time, this is the source material. You know? This is the story.
Yeah, well, we have now pretty caught up in most respects. We have caught up to the books now, which makes next season extremely interesting, unless he gets that book out in front, which he won't. Yeah, it's right now the big things, most of the big things that, like we were saying, like, how could you kill Jon Snow off like that? Well, that's in the books, It's like these are moments that are taken from the books, and that is the story. And of course, the books have even more time maybe to delve into things and get even more psychological. But still, yeah, it is intrinsically not just a dark story, but often a depressing story, and often one that feels nihilistic, because it's like right until we know the ending, it's like, oh, is it just about good people dying,
and losing, and bad people sort of being rewarded for their bad behavior. Hey, guess what? We see a lot of that in the world, sadly. Not always, but okay, so my overall thoughts about this episode is that thematically, which is, I want to commend the showrunners for having been able to create thematic links this season to stories that don't inherently necessarily have them. And the big one for me last night was once again, just what's the cost of vengeance? We saw that with Brienne. Yeah. She sort of gave up her opportunity to save Sansa and fulfill her vow to Catelyn by going for revenge. We saw that with certainly Cersei. Like, she tried to get revenge on Marjorie for slighting her and embarrassing her. Well, now you're really embarrassed and humiliated. You know what that feels like. Arya being sort of blinded because she went for vengeance versus duty, and certainly in Dorne, that was about revenge. Though again, we'll talk about how that sort of played out. Those are our general thoughts. We want to know what you think. Leave your comments below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you have big questions about the show going forward? We're going to dig in much deeper now for our larger show. So if you want to see that, well, you should definitely click on it when it's available.
Or you're just watching it happen right now.
Or you're watching it happen right now.